Greetings, everyone. Welcome to this session of Inner Power Group Coaching. We have a lot of new faces, so you will learn we like to snap it up for each other. So could you please go ahead and snap it up for your beautiful selves for being here today. So here is what we are going to do. The format of today's session is that we are going to do the first 10 to 15 minutes tops is going to be a little exercise that I'm going to walk us through. And then the rest of the time is all for Q&A, any questions that you have. So one of the things that often comes up is around developing your brand in a social or online space. One of the things that I see people spending a lot of time on when it comes to building their brand is focusing on things like the colors or their taglines or all of these other things that oftentimes keeps people from getting in the game and starting to post content consistently on social media. So for this session, I'm going to give you 3 quick prompts that you can use to start to brainstorm or to think about who is your audience. So the first one I want you to think about is going to be, what is the change or transformation you seek to make? So if you are able to, I want you to just take a couple seconds right now to write down your response to this prompt. What is the change or transformation that you seek to make? And I want you to do it just kind of stream of consciousness. You don't need to think too deep about it. But if we were to be riding in an Uber together, or we were to be standing in line together at a Starbucks or anywhere like that, and I was to say to you, what is the change that your business or your product seeks to make? What would be your response to that? So why don't you go ahead and just take a couple seconds to write that down. If you're driving and you're not able to write it down, I want you to just think mentally, what would be your answer to this question? What is the change or transformation you seek to make? Now, oftentimes, a lot of people come to Inner Power, they come to this program, or they come to social media with different revenues or different projects. They might have a side hustle and an acting career, or they might have a professional career where they're a lawyer, but at the same time, they want to build a brand as a speaker. And so a lot of people feel that they should hide one aspect of who they are, or maybe they're an activist, but they have a business and they feel that I should hide this other part of myself. What I always encourage people to do is, especially because of the internet, that you should not be hiding any aspect of yourself. That should be who you are, is what makes you unique as a brand and business. So the example we're using that you might see in the handout is for what is a change or transformation you seek to make, is you might have seen Serena Williams gave a really good example of really representing and living your brand. So she just recently was, after she lost at Wimbledon, she was asked by a reporter to respond to fellow tennis icon Billie Jean King's recent comments that says basically, if Williams wants to win another championship, she should focus more on tennis and less on all the other amazing things that she's doing. So when she was asked this, put on the spot right after her loss, she responded by saying, "The day I stop fighting for equality and for people that look like you and me will be the day I'm in my grave." And I think this is a really good example, because when you start to really live your brand, when you really start to live your mission, you are going to get pushback. But the thing to remember is that if you're doing your brand well, there is going to be an aspect of what you are doing that is going to be polarizing. And that is a good thing, because you don't want to spend time, money, and energy trying to convert someone or a group of people to be your customer, when they find out who you really are and what you really believe, they're never going to become your customer to begin with. So a lot of times, the thing I want you to remember is that we're in a landscape where customer experience is increasingly taking precedent. And so things like empathy, connection, and community are really the foundation of all brand development. And so if you're trying to play the game of, I want everybody, I want the mass market, I want anybody I can possibly reach to become my audience, and I don't want to offend anybody, then what's going to end up happening is you're going to become vanilla. You're going to become boring. And you're not going to really have an experience or emotional impact with those that you are looking to connect with. So if you find yourself hiding your brand or trying to keep secret some of the values that you have, I want you to take a note or a page out of Serena's book and really stand proud in your beliefs, because that is the change that you're looking to make with your brand. So the next question we're going to come to that I want you to reflect upon is, my brand or product is for people who believe what? My brand or product is for people who believe what? So I want you to take 30 seconds, 40 seconds to write this one down. I don't want you to think about it super hard. Whatever comes to mind for my brand or product is for people who believe what? And as you're reflecting upon that, the example that we are going to use is, and I will, because there's a lot of people on the phone, so don't worry, I'm going to walk you through this. But I know this is kind of old news now, but y'all might have seen earlier this year when Nike used Colin Kaepernick as their official brand ambassador. Now, this was, some people would say, a polarizing person to choose. For Nike, if we were to really think about, though, who are the kind of people, what do people believe that buy Nike's brand? Nike is looking to connect with people who are cutting edge, who are advanced thinkers, who are progressive, who are looking to get new technology and look different and to think differently. They're not looking for the kind of people who would be opposed to someone like Colin Kaepernick or be opposed to diversity. Usually we're going to generalize. People who would be opposed to Colin Kaepernick or opposed to diversity are people who are stuck in their old ways. They're people who aren't cutting edge. They're people who have the same way of thinking about things and want us to go back in time to how things were. Those are not going to really be Nike clients, not going to be people who are buying Nike to begin with. So the people who are burning their Nike things, for Nike, it was a calculated decision that those people don't align with how we envision our customers. And you can see that this wasn't the first time Nike's done this. Nike in 1988 addressed ageism when it featured 80-year-old Bay Area icon Walter Stack. And then before that, they just have a long history of using diversity and modeling their values through their advertisements. And it's because they know very clearly that my brand, our product, is for people who believe. They have a very clear answer to that question. And so what I want you to remember, this is a quote by Seth Godin, is that a relentless pursuit of the masses will make you boring, because mass means average, the center of the curve, which requires you to offend no one and satisfy everyone. So when you start to think about what is the change that I'm looking to make and what does my audience believe, I want you to embrace, even if it's polarizing, I want you to embrace that authenticity of who you are and what you believe and what your audience believes as well. So the last question is what we're going to explore in our Q&A is, how will you consistently tell your story? Because ultimately, as we've already talked about, brand isn't necessarily just your colors. It's not your logo. What you're really selling is an emotion. And the way you do that is by consistently, over and over again, telling your story in an authentic way. And through that, you earn the time of your audience. And through that time, you earn their trust. And when you consistently earn someone's trust, you build a relationship, and that's how they become a customer. And so in your handout, I gave a couple great examples of people who I feel are really storytelling well. So there's a great article that Janelle Monáe just came out in, where it really details and outlines the really epic history she's had of being a phenomenal storyteller and how she stayed true to her brand, all while people were criticizing her and telling her, no one's ever going to buy your brand, you need to change it. And she stayed consistent, and ultimately now she's a huge icon. Down here below, we have Nas Daily. He puts out a 1-minute video every single day on Facebook. He's doing a really good job storytelling. All these links you're going to find where you can explore in more detail. This is Jasmine Star. What I really like what Jasmine does is in her Instagram posts, she posts phenomenal photos, but she also does an excellent job storytelling. So if anybody's looking to see examples of how you can really use storytelling on Instagram, especially if you're a writer, she's a great example. And then over here, this good-looking guy in the bottom right, that's Grant. Grant's on the call with us. Grant's been an Inner Power member for over a year. And just wanted to congratulate Grant because Grant and Grant's company, they just put out their first newsletter. So I know everybody's on mute, but let's snap it up for Grant. Show Grant some love. Was phenomenally written. I got a lot of value out of it. And Grant, please, I apologize to your brother. His brother's right here, but his brother got cut out, so I apologize to him. But I suggest that you check out their newsletter, sign up for their newsletter. And then I included an article as well. It's an 18-minute read, so it's a little bit long of a read, but it's one of Gary Vaynerchuk's articles, How to Tell a Story on Social Media, that I know you'll find a lot of tremendous value out of. And so, as I said, I knew it was going to be quick, but I wanted to make sure that you got a little value up front, and then we're going to jump into the Q&A session. So how we're going to do this is everybody's going to get a chance to go one at a time. And like I said, you're going to get 4 to 5 minutes to answer your question. So when it's your turn on the spot, what I want you to do is to share your name, a little bit about your business or what you're focusing on, and then as succinctly as you can to ask your question. And I invite you to try to be succinct, because if it takes you 3 minutes to explain who you are, what your brand does, and what your question is, you're only going to get about a minute of actually getting an answer. So I recommend, as we're waiting, that you're thinking about how you're going to phrase your question so that when your time comes, we can really maximize that time to the best of our abilities. So because of that, what we're going to do is we're going to have Grant go, and then we'll have Adora go. Since they're regulars, they've been here plenty of times. They know how the show goes. And then all of our new people who are so excited to have you will go one at a time. So Grant, I'm going to unmute your line if you want to unmute yours as well. You want to test out your mic?
Yo.
Hey, Grant, and congrats. I hope you saw that shout out.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that, Tom. I do. Yeah, actually, I did use something I picked up from your one of your other sessions. You showed us Canva.
Yes.
And when I was using the company I used to put out the newsletter, they kind of had a limited photo database, and I was like, oh, I got this, no problem. So I just went into Canva, and I found some sort of stock photos that could help me, put that out. So thanks for that.
Of course.
So I guess to build off that a little bit, so I'm excited about getting this newsletter out. I'm going to do it once a month is my intention. And, I was digging into it, and I'm pretty sure, most, email blasting services, like MailChimp's another one. I know they have analytics involved in, looking at, who's opening it, who's clicking through, so on and so forth. And I guess my question to you would be, when because I know you're very consistent with your newsletter that you put out, when you're digging into some of the data on, your newsletter, how are you interpreting that? What is to you a successful, newsletter, I guess, from that perspective, analytic perspective?
Yeah. So I think what you really want to do with newsletters, so you don't drive yourself crazy, is take a zoomed out look. Because if you really analyze each and every newsletter of what was the click-through rate and how many people opened it, you're going to drive yourself crazy. So I think when you start to look at in maybe a 6 to 15 range of emails, then you can start to see, are people reading it? Are they not? Is the content interesting? But one thing to just keep in mind is that when you send out an email, we're hoping that people open it. And there's so many factors: the time of day you sent it, the subject line, all of those kind of things. So especially when you're starting out, I think the best thing to do is to just first have the goal of a win is if I send it every single month. And then secondly, look and see who opened it. And if they're people give them a call and say, hey, I was wondering if don't let them know that you stalkily knew they opened it, but be like, hey, I was wondering if you've happened to see that we've started a newsletter. Oh yeah, I did. I just read that. And then I'd interview a couple people and say, what got you to open it? Was it the subject? Was it the time of day? Was it this? Was it that? What did you like about it? What else would you hear? I would use that kind of an approach. When you start to get more and more people subscribed, that's when the data becomes a little bit more clear. For example, I was helping a nonprofit fundraise over these past 6 months, and I did a deep dive into their database. And so though we're talking almost 1,000 people in their database. And so what I did for them is I went through and was able to find, I basically scaled their donors of who are their highest paying donors, who's their middle tier, and who's their lowest tier. And then what I went through is said, who are the people who are lapsed donors? Basically people who paid at one time but didn't. And what I did with the email is I paired up who are lapsed donors, but who are consistently opening emails. And by consistently, I mean have opened an email in the past 6 months. And if they have, if they're a lapsed donor and they opened an email, it means that they still care about this organization. They just haven't donated. So then what I do was I'd pair that list of people who are lapsed donors but have opened emails, and then I'd go into a meeting with our board, or I'd go into a meeting with our staff, and I'd say, who has any sort of relationship with this person? And then we'd find out who in the room has a relationship with this person, and we'd approach them with the conversation to re-engage them. So if when you're going through your list, you see people that you actually know either through DMs or in person or phone calls, and you see that they haven't purchased, but they're opening every single one of your emails, I would find a way to reach out to them and have a conversation to take it from them just reading your emails. So that could be you sending them just a one-off email just directly to them. It could mean you're DMing them on Messenger, on Instagram. Could mean you're calling them. Could mean you're setting up a lunch meeting, because it's showing that they have interest in you, but you want to move that interest dial from kind of a lurker to somebody who's engaged either as a customer or as somebody who's referring people to you. So those are kind of some of the analytical ways you can use email subscriptions. Does that make sense?
Cool. I dig that. Totally.
Cool. Any other follow-up questions?
No, I think that's good for now.
Okay, perfect. So then we will go to Adora. Adora, you got a question? You want to tell us a little bit about your business?
Sure. My name's Adora. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. And my business is more about speaking and presentation. Right now, I'm mainly doing it around finance and budgeting, but I'm thinking I want to just expand it more to just a sense of how you can be your full self. And I see finance and budgeting as a way to release yourself and giving you freedom, and just talking about other things that create freedom and things that may be holding you back, but in a less abstract way, in a very kind of almost a finance sort of way. So that's where my question comes in. As I try to expand from this area of budgeting and finance that I've been doing a lot of speaking on, something wider. I know you were talking about some sort of inspirational thing that I when I was talking about how I became a writer and the origins of that and what affirmation had to do with that. How do I marry the two and expand and spread my reach?
So you're saying you don't quite know yet what that new thing is that you want to talk about, but you know you want it to be finance and some sort of other inspirational, empowering, motivational content, but you're not quite sure what that content is yet?
Or it's more like I know the content needs to be something wider, just in the sense of talking to people about how they can free themselves and hopefully make themselves more generous in the act and kinder and compassionate people in the act. So that's where I'm going to. It's just finding my way from, I talk about finance and budgeting and financial liberation. How do I make it all the way to that destination that I'm talking about?
So, for me, I usually like to take things away from just the intellectual way of trying to think about it and into actually discovering it through experience. And so what I would suggest is, and it's kind of a double whammy, you get to create good content. You're smiling because you already know what I'm going to say. And at the same time, you get to kind of feel out and discover what it is you like to talk about. So I would suggest starting to create, how long are your speeches normally? 15 to 30 minutes?
Yeah, about.
So it doesn't take too much time as you're figuring it out. I would start to create anywhere between 5 to 15 minute videos. And in those, you sit down if you want and you write out, start with what you already know and start to branch out from there. So you have finances, you're going to say something about finances, but then figure out what is maybe a fear or a mental block or some sort of pain point that is really that you hear people say that's kind of behind the mechanics of finance that they're trying to learn. So for instance, if you're teaching people about savings, some of the pain points that people might have about creating a savings account is that they're worried that if they don't have the money, that they might run out. So then that's an easy switch to a fear of loss. And really then the key is abundance. So how do you go from teaching somebody about a savings account, but then tying a little something about abundance at the end? But the more you do those talks, you're going to kind of find what is the natural fit for you, and you'll discover your voice through practicing it, through actually doing it. And then once you start putting that content out there, people are going to respond with questions. And when you see the questions people have, it's going to let you know, oh, that's something I should create a video on to respond to this person's actual questions. And when you do that for 3 months, then you're going to have a bunch of talks that you did already for social media that you can package with a little presentation and start doing out on the road or to other people as well. And what I would do to kind of triple whammy it is, as you're posting those on, I would use LinkedIn and I would use Instagram. When you're posting those on LinkedIn and Instagram, anybody who likes one of those posts, I would have a couple DM templates that you can use. And I would direct message each one of those people who liked one of those posts, direct message them and say something like, hey, insert their name. Thanks for sharing some love on one of my posts. It's always good to meet somebody who's also passionate about financial wellness. I was wondering what drew you to my post, or what about what's an area of financial wellness you're looking to expand upon? And people are, since this can sometimes be a private thing, finances, you're going to have some really good conversations in your DMs. You're going to get even more clarity on what are the kind of things people want to talk about. But also you're going to start to build relationships and leads for where you can do your next talks, especially on LinkedIn. So through doing that, you get the benefit of figuring out what your next talks are going to be. You get to create content, and you get to start building your network and relationships for what your next talks will be. Does that sound good?
It does sound good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Oh, that's all. That's plenty.
Perfect. Okay. Why don't we then go to Stephanie, and then after Stephanie, Sakina, you're on deck after Stephanie. So
okay.
There you go, Stephanie.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Good. Nice to meet you. I was just referred to this, and I was kind of checking this out for a client, actually, to see what it was you do. So for myself, I do speaking. I do mindfulness speaking and coaching, and I'm an acting coach as well. And it was someone who referred me, and I thought you were doing things about actors. So I'm just learning now you're doing other business things. So for myself, I wasn't actually thinking of this for myself.
You can ask a question that your client might ask as well, if you'd like.
Okay. So I have clients who were interested in how to use social media to get out there. And I found your thing and I thought, oh, let me check that out and see how, to refer them to you or to see what you're doing and what that is. I have various clients doing various things. I'm a mindfulness coach, so I'm usually helping them increase their performance with less stress, that kind of stuff. But they kind of range the gamut with what they do. For myself, I don't actually use LinkedIn that much. I should. I'm on there a lot. I have a lot of people pinging me on there. But so I'm hearing you like, right. So I've done the videos, everything you just told her to do. I did that for my thing for a while back, where I created videos and did online programs and things like that. So for the clients, I just basically wanted to hear how you were helping people with social media to expand their businesses. So I'm kind of lurking.
Okay, perfect. You said you work with actors?
I do. I work with some actors. I was just an acting coach. Now I also do mindfulness coaching. So that my clientele is much more, then I'm getting into an affluent group of clientele. Actors are, living paycheck to paycheck sometimes. But I've done a lot of acting coaching, and that's how I found out about you. So I thought that's what you were doing. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it probably would help if I would have given an introduction to myself. So I help people to make an impact and an income doing what they love, primarily through storytelling on social media, using digital marketing and paid traffic like Facebook ads as well. So
I see. Okay.
This program is one of the ones that I do. It's called Inner Power Business Coaching, and we bring together diverse creatives, entrepreneurs, and side hustlers to really support each other through affirmation, accountability, and support. And I also provide Q&A sessions and trainings like this one.
So when people sign up for you, they work with you privately, or there's these kinds of groups, or how does it work for them to get this ongoing support?
Yeah, so there's three primarily ways. One is, so I founded the Celebration Academy, which is the online learning platform that brings all of this together. So one is they can have access to all of the courses. The second is through group coaching, which is what this is. And then the third is one-on-one coaching.
Got it.
So it's really kind of where their level of financial ability and time is really where they'll decide where to enter.
And there's not a sequence in terms of start here, then do this. It's more of just more finances and scheduling.
Yeah. So that's a great question that we can dive into as part of your question. And for anybody, so that's called a value ladder, where you have like a low tiered product, middle tier product, high tiered product. A lot of people who teach digital marketing will encourage you to get people to enter into your lowest tier. And then the hope is that they'll advance into your highest paid as they go. What I have found, and what a lot of people are finding the longer we use, ladder marketing, is that usually people kind of remain at the one that they entered into. So for me, I focus on the two that are the most successful, which is Inner Power, which we're doing right now, and then one-on-one coaching. And so it's usually pretty clear that for some people, they really need that deep dive of one-on-one. And what other people need is really that community support to really be able to network and to interact and get engagement from other people. And so that's kind of usually the fork in the road for them.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah. I just wanted to understand what you do. I got a link and I came on and I was just trying to catch up with what you were doing here. Got it.
I appreciate you taking the chance on me. Thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah, sure.
Well, we'll double back if any questions come up, okay?
Okay, I think I'm good. Thanks.
Wonderful. So we're going to Sakina, and then Tom, you are on deck. What's up, Sakina? I'm so glad you joined us.
Thank you for the invite. I'm super excited that I was able to tune in.
Of course. How's it going?
Good. I'm loving everything that I'm hearing. So thus far, I'm taking notes. So thank you.
Of course. Do you want to tell folks a little bit about what you're doing? And then if you have a question?
Yeah. So my name is Sakina. I run a life and style blog that's centered around sustainable lifestyle. So anything in regards to eco-friendly living and health. So anything you would do in your daily life as far as fashion, beauty, wellness, travel, but basically with the eco-friendly undertone. I guess that's the best way to describe it. I just want you to have a fulfilling life that is good for the planet as well.
I love that.
So I blog mostly, but I'm branching out now to YouTube, and I'm dabbling into video creation, and I'm just trying to find my space in the YouTube world.
I love it. So is there any question that you have or anything that I can help with, or you want to bounce off?
So when I first tuned in, I was driving, so I did not get a chance to write down the 2 questions you wanted us to reflect upon. So if you could repeat those for me, that'd be awesome.
I can do that, and I can send you the PDF. Is that cool?
That's perfect. Yeah. And then I guess my question would be, I like your tip for both the MailChimp or like the newsletter thing, and what was your other tip that you gave about the DMing people who like your posts? I like that. I'm in a similar situation where I feel like I have a lot of followers that are dropping off. I think a lot of people have mentioned that they've seen a lot of different changes with Instagram. But I also have a lot of people who will watch my stories or something like that, but they fail to engage in anything that I post. And so I've been having a hard time trying to pull teeth, trying to get people to actually engage with the stuff that they're seeing me post, because I can see that they're looking at it, but no one's engaging. I'm trying to find clever ways or better ways to start that conversation with them.
So, and as you're talking, I'm looking at your engagement on your page. So is the question, how do I get Oh, there you go. You're on my top right now. How do I get more engagement?
Yes. Yes.
So I would say one thing we want to do is begin with the end in mind. So what is the engagement you want to lead to what?
I want the engagement to lead to people telling me more about what they like, what they dislike, and ultimately them going to my blog, reading my content, consuming my content, and eventually buying products that I produce for them.
So one thing to keep in mind is that you and I are marketers. So when we go on Instagram, we are not there because it is fun or it is pleasurable. I mean, it might be, but we're there to build a brand, to make money, and to make an impact. Most people are on social media because it's an escape, because they're bored on the bus, because of so many different reasons. And so they're, for the most part, not going to engage in the way we want them to. So one thing to do is to really kind of take it into your own hands. And so if you see people that are consistently looking at your Instagram stories, to me, that's almost a better metric than the people who are liking our posts. Because the people who are liking our posts oftentimes are discovering us through our hashtags. And then and for the most part, or 50-50, people who are liking hashtags are usually people like you and me who are trying to build our brand and are searching hashtags. But people who are actually looking at your stories are people who kind of went out of their way to engage with you. And it usually means that they already have some sort of relationship with you. So one thing you can do is to take note of mentally or in a spreadsheet, people who looked at maybe a couple of your stories. And while you're watching TV or you're chilling somewhere, I would go through and like some of the pictures on each one of those people's comments on each one of their pages. So let's say 50 people saw your stories. Then I would be like, okay, I'm about to sit down for a 2-hour movie or 2 episodes. And I would go through each one of those people's pages and comment on their posts. They're gonna be like, oh my gosh, Sakina liked my post. She's the celebrity. And then when they comment back, when they like it or they comment back, I would then DM them and say like, hey, just wanted to follow up and say, like, I really appreciate what you're doing. And, you know, you're super awesome. And then they'll probably respond and be like, you're cool. Thank you. And then I would respond with the question that you're wondering. So if there's some sort of thing you're wondering, you know, what kind of products they're using or what kind of products they're looking for, then I would say, hey, you might know that I focus on da-da-da. And so I'm always curious what people are using. Here's this. And, you know, if you're doing that with 50 people a week or 20 people a week, it's also going to kind of perfect your sales pitch. You're going to find the order of the question that works best for you to bring it up to people. Maybe it works best if you ask them what they're doing first and then tell them what you're doing second. Maybe it works best if you tell them first. You're going to kind of figure that out as you go because it actually gives you that direct experience talking to your customers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that.
So it'll take a little bit more time, but it'll totally be worth it.
Cool. I like that. Thank you.
Of course. And I know you're going on YouTube as well, and you may already be doing this, but I would say anything you're posting on YouTube, make sure you're repurposing on Instagram as well. Does that make sense? Because YouTube doesn't really have that good of an organic discovery anymore, whereas Instagram and LinkedIn still has it. So you'll get people to follow you on YouTube and you can grow an audience, but doesn't have the same organic discovery or reach as these other platforms do as well.
Yeah.
And just to kind of pull in the community factor, can I ask you a question that I know you'll be super helpful to our community here? Can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely, yes.
So, Sakina, you have been doing excellent photo shoots. I'm going to pull it up for people who can't see. Do you have any tips or tricks for people who, like, your photos seem very natural, but at the same time, like, they're very intentional? Do you have any, and so for people who can't see, because you're on the phone, I'll make sure I include Sakina's Instagram handle, but they're very well done photos. So do you have any advice for people on how to create good Instagram photos like you've done?
Yes. I would say pair up with someone who is also a blogger. That's definitely helped me a lot. In the beginning, when I first started, I definitely relied mostly on myself. And I use a tripod and a remote to take photos. But that is a lot of work. It's hard to be the person behind the camera and then try to be carefree and fun in front of the camera at the same time. So I started reaching out to people who are also bloggers, and it doesn't always work, but luckily I've met a couple people who are also bloggers, and they're willing to like exchange time. So what we'll do is we'll plan a day. We both kind of talk about what we want to capture that day, and we just take turns taking photos of each other. That's a cheap way to do it. I also hire, so the ones in green you see me by the pool, I hire people. I'll hire photographers. I mean, obviously amateur photographers so that it doesn't cost as much. But I feel like when you invest that money or that time in finding someone who can actually take quality photos, your work is going to come out better. And that's something that I value. I want my work to look professional because eventually as traction and momentum grows, like I want people to be able to look at me and everything just be cohesive and as professional as possible.
That's what's up. Which one of these were ones you did where you collaborated, where you said, let's take ones together? Are there any that I'm scrolling through?
So if you scroll up, the ones where, scroll all the way up. So the most recent one where it has 37 likes, that one, me and a friend, we actually went to high school together. We reconnected because we both started blogging. So we both, had time. We set a date. We allotted a couple hours. We'd have our outfits together. We plan a place to meet, and then we just go and we shoot. We just take turns, and it's cool when you meet someone who's flexible and who's you have to meet someone who's kind of on the same vibe, because I've done this before and it didn't work out well with other people. So you really have to kind of, it's almost like dating. You have to find someone who's compatible with you, because other times there's only people who are strictly focused on getting their work done. And then they kind of let the quality of your pictures go to the wayside. I've had that happen. So just be careful with who you partner with, because that'll affect the quality of the photos, because they're the ones taking your photos,
That's what's up. Well, I appreciate that. And that's how you and I met. We DM'd on Instagram, and you were a guest on my podcast. So the DM collaboration really works well.
Yes. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, so we are going to go to Tom, and then I do apologize. 2 and 3, did you say your name was Antonio?
Yes, it's Antonio. I stopped driving, so that would be great if I went after them.
Okay, so we'll do Tom and then Antonio. So Tom, whenever you're ready.
Thanks very much. Thanks for this presentation today and kind of opening up your thoughts to us. Just to introduce myself, I'm Tom Pasella. I'm an actor with 30 years of professional work, primarily in theater, but I've also worked in television and film, both in Chicago and in Los Angeles, where I'm based now. I've also worked as a director for theater, and I've also worked in the story departments of various popular reality television series.
Nice.
Whether they're competition series or construction competition events, and even some of the romance competition series. I'll let you guess what those are. In the last few years, I've been hired, however, by one specific company in Silicon Valley to coach their employees to most effectively present themselves and give presentations related to their work in public forums like annual or biannual industry conventions. They're there representing their department, their product, and their company overall. The reason I'm there is to help them zero in on and focus on the story of their presentation. And often I'm there to increase their confidence and their comfort level, whether they're in front of 400 people, 40 people, or 4,000 people. And I'm consistently getting feedback from these clients that has transformed their feelings about public speaking. In many cases, it's people who are, technical engineers who they're not often in front of people other than the few people that they work with in their department, and many of them are actually working alone if they're working from home. So I have one client. I do this work in between the acting work I do, and it's just not enough. I need to increase the work that I do in this field, and I haven't really used social media support network as a corporate speaking coach as of yet, and I'd like to build that in a very smart and efficient way. So I'm kind of a tadpole as far as this goes, and I do find that I do have great ways to communicate on the performance side. I want to be able to communicate as a coach towards potential clients as well. So with that, I'm kind of open to your thoughts.
Okay, awesome. So a couple of questions before I jump in. In your mind, how soon do you need this to start making money?
Well, I'd say, I am making money now, but in terms of expanding to new clientele, I'd like to have that happen within the next year.
Okay, that's a good timeline. Okay, I didn't know if it was like next week, Tom. So
no, that's zero, not even close to realistic. No,
okay.
It's something that has to be built over the course of, I'm hoping, a year.
Okay, and are you looking to do just organic connections, or do you have some resources to do Facebook ads as well?
No, I think I can, if I smartly invest for Facebook ads, I think I can do that. I also should say that I work with a partner in this process, so she and I have to kind of collaborate as to how we want to put our message out there. I'm not doing this alone.
Okay, last question, then I promise I'll actually answer a question.
Good.
How many, you said you have one client now, but in forever, how many clients doing the corporate coaching have you had?
Well, in forever, I would say it's really only been a handful. This kind of came to me because I used to do these presentations myself as a speaker. And the shift has happened there really since the era of Steve Jobs. The shift has happened where the corporations mostly want to use their own people on stage as opposed to people they hire to represent them. So my partner and I came into this knowing that if we weren't going to be hired, we could at least help the people already in the companies who are going to be put up on that stage. So I've had many, many clients as a speaker myself, but this new position of coaching speakers within the company is relatively new.
Okay, got you. Okay, so here's a couple things I do, and then you can tell me what is too much and I can help you scale it back. First thing is, so you'd want to have some sort of product that you can deliver where you don't just have to go there. So it can be courses, it can be online like this, it can be over the phone. Have something like that so then it's scalable. Then the thing that you would do is have some sort of free experience that they get to experience you in like how you're experiencing me now, because I'm sure that's one of the most powerful aspects of what you do, and create some sort of hour to an hour and a half, whether it's a writing workshop, something like that like I'm taking you through now, that you can take people through and they can kind of get an entry-level confidence, entry-level first step into, really having confidence in their voice and expressing themselves. So then when you scale back, how do we get people to that? The first thing I would do is get a couple of those on the books, and I would get in touch with all of those clients who ever gave powerful testimonials of what you've done and say, hey, just wanted to reach out and let you know on these 2 dates online, so you can be anywhere in the world you are, I want to let you know I'm doing a workshop that's an hour and a half that for you can kind of re-get your confidence up of where you're at. But anybody that you think might benefit from this as well, I'd like for you to invite them, and they can attend online. It's totally free. And we're just going to kind of go through together and give each other support. But I'm also going to give you hands-on tools that you'll walk away feeling a little bit more confident for a presentation you're going to do next week, and some things you can do if you already feel strong to be even stronger. Invite all those people. To me, I consider this a super big success. We got 6 or so people on here, walk them through it. And then at the end, I would do like a 5-minute pitch, nothing more than that, saying, hey, if you want to work a little bit more together, I host a group like this every month, or hey, I work one-on-one, or hey, I have some courses. I'm going to send you all an email with the recording of this, and I'll also include the information for this. And then you'd have some sort of maybe 5 to 7 email sequence that explains what your product is that all of those people then get in addition to the recording of the program. So that's kind of the selling part. So then the brand part, to introduce yourself to more people than just the people you've worked with know and the people they know, is if you're able to, I would suggest starting a podcast that's either once a month to start off with or is twice a month to start off with. And what I would do is kind of like I was saying to Adora, pick some sort of topic, maybe something like 5 best tips to start off if you're really nervous about giving a presentation, or 5 ways to start an org, whatever it is. And then I would set up a camera. Since you're an actor, you're already used to performing in front of a camera. And I would give that presentation. I would record that and I would post the video onto YouTube, onto Facebook, onto those kind of places. And then I would strip the audio and the audio becomes the podcast. Then what I would do, and so this is what I'm telling me if this is too much, but then what I would do is take that half-hour episode, and chances are there's probably quite a bit of 1 to 3 minute really powerful segments. So let's say you do 5 things that'll make you rock as being a performer, or giving a presentation. I would try to find a 1 to 3 minute segment from each of those 5 points you make. So if you do that, you're going to have 5 to 6 to 7 1 to 3 minute segments from your half-hour thing. You can now use that to post throughout the week and throughout the month on Instagram and LinkedIn. When you do that, you'd want to make sure that you're using the amount of hashtags that they let you do. And the people who comment or who like I've been saying to other people, I would then start direct messaging them and saying, hey, thanks so much for sharing some love. It's always great meeting people who want to be a good speaker. I was wondering what it is that you're working on in being a speaker, or what's an obstacle for you, and start having a lot of those one-to-one conversations. And then you'd always conclude after you answer all their questions by saying, hey, why don't you come join me on my next one, and we can get you on live and I'll give you feedback one-on-one. And then boom, next thing you know, they're in the email sequence, and it's just like rinse and repeat, and you keep building. And the double whammy is not only will you start getting those one-on-one clients, but you're going to start building yourself up as a professional and someone who's an expert in this area. And you can start pitching yourself to not just training people, but getting paid to do speaking engagements and giving speeches and all those kind of things. Does that make sense? There's a lot at one time.
No, that's great. No, it's good. And I don't want to exploit too much time from anybody else, or take too much time from them. So this is great. All really great ideas. And I'm going to huddle up with my partner and see where she'd like to take it as well. We can collaborate. And I think the idea of podcasting and doing these live presentations with invitees would be terrific. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Tom. Mm-hmm. Okay, Antonio, nice to meet you. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you're doing?
Nice to meet you. Yes, Christine Aller is my personal coach, and she raves about you. And I've listened to a couple of your podcast episodes, and you're amazing. Thank you for this call. I am a storyteller. I get to tell stories to kids and adults and teachers and educators. My dad is from Cuba, so I tell stories about what it's like growing up, being born in America, to the 2 cultures. And I had a different question, but the question, what you were talking about, authenticity, really struck. One question is, I have, hours and hours of YouTube videos and audio albums that were once cassettes. That's how long I've been doing it. And I'm not in the podcast space yet. I feel it's low-hanging fruit if I just have somebody hire an assistant, throw all that stuff into some random podcast and turn my attention to that. That first question is that seem viable? But I think the more important question is authenticity. I do have audiences that will not hire me because of some of the adult stories I've told. And I've had some adult sort of theater spaces concerned that I tell stories to kids, like, oh, he's just a kid's performer. And then schools not hiring me because, oh, you did a show with the word penis in the title. I lost many jobs because of my sort of authentic sort of voice. So I exist in these 2 spheres. And I feel like a politician on social media. There's some festivals that I respect and admire and do great work that you can't even, I remember 10 years ago at a very prominent festival, somebody talked about their lesbian daughter, and it was a miserable disaster, and part of me doesn't want to be in that sphere necessarily, but it's also like, anyway, so 2 questions are podcasts and then authenticity. When I have, I am able to reach out to all these different types of people.
Okay, so clarity on, let's tackle that last one first. Authenticity. So are you asking me, like, do you want me to just respond to kind of what you just said? Or I didn't necessarily hear a specific question other than I heard all these things are happening. What do you think? Is that kind of what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the question about social media is like when the principals and teachers and parents see a post versus like my, Lower East Side, Manhattan, Chicago crew sees it. I feel like I don't want to do multiple handles or tags, but I feel like, I gotta make sure that the most conservative soccer dad on the thing versus, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like my authentic voice is stymied by the diversity of my crowd.
Yeah. Is there, like, if we were to draw concentric circles, so I'm hearing that there's people who are the conservatives, like, if you're in this other concentric circle, no matter what, I'll never book you. Is there anybody who overlaps who's like, hey, I know that, like, you are an adult outside of when you speak to my kids, like, just don't speak to that when they're here. Are there anybody who's inside that circle?
Yeah, there's plenty of those schools as well. Yeah, many schools, like the schools that won't have me, are more than equal by the schools that would have me, considering that some of the stuff I've done as an adult. Yeah.
So you kind of have two options then. One is, like, stop swearing, stop saying penis, stop doing all of those things, and just be like the vanilla version of yourself and play it safe.
Right.
Scrub the whole.
Right.
I mean, clearly I have a bias of how I'm presenting this.
I gotcha.
That's one.
Sure.
The other is, like, this is who you are, and be yourself. Right. And there are people who are going to be in that circle that are going to like you. Kind of how we started, that when you try to pretend like I can have all of the masses like me, then you're also like, then what separates you? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is different about you? And even if you have two different accounts, like, they're going to find the other account. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the internet. So, like, I would say those people who will never book you, then you just got to bless and release them. But here's the other thing that always happens is, like, I showed an article about Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V. For years, nobody would book him because he refuses to not say the F word. So he swears nonstop. He's left so much money on the table. And at the same time, if you're in this marketing world, he's like he's got his own shoe line, and he's an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Shoe lines are just for, basketball players and musicians. Which entrepreneur ever in history got a shoe line? So the thing that the world will catch up to where you're at. So as you build your audience, double downing on the audience that embraces who you are authentically. As that audience grows, the other people are going to be like, okay, actually, since so many people like him, like, the demand is so high that actually come back. You'd be like, well, since you were a hater, you get my hater rate is double. So, that's kind of that long game, where you play the brand game versus. Now, if you're saying, Tom, like, great advice, but I need to eat next week. Well, then, I guess you got the trade-off of maybe I got to scrub so that I can get food in my belly. I don't have time. I don't have the luxury, the privilege time of being my authentic self. That's kind of the internal decision you got to make. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. It does. Sort of related to that, my father is Cuban. I've been approached by multiple producers about different TV shows, and they always say something like, wow, yeah, but Cuba is such a small market. Could the character be Mexican? And some answers, like, that's a ridiculous question. Another answer is like, well, if that gets me in front of millions of people instead of dozens or hundreds of people, I don't care, because I still have that original story. It's kind of like Stephen King's thing. Like, I don't care what they do to my books, because the books still exist. If they want to give me a boatload of money to make movies and change them all around, that's fine. So, but it's definitely a little bit like, I feel a little weird, a little hard in those meetings with the producers. Like, yeah, sure, Mexican sells. If it needs to be a Mexican star, that's fine. So we'll have a different discussion about the difference between Cubans and Mexicans. But as if the movie, you know what I mean?
I do. I mean, it's racism, and so you have to decide for yourself, how am I going to operate through racism as a white guy? I'd never give you advice on how to do that. So respect for whatever decision you make on that one. So we will jump into your podcast question, but I know some people have to go right at 6. And so for people who do have to leave right at 6, I just want to thank you so much for joining us. And I will follow up. I have everybody's emails. So I will follow up with you to share the replay of this, which I'll have out on Thursday, so that you can go through it if you'd like. And I would love for you to become an official member of Inner Power Business Coaching. We do meet twice a month. As you can see, a lot of regulars that come here and are able to build upon what they learn. So to join, it's $150 for a month, and you get to attend both sessions. But I want to make sure that finance isn't a barrier for anybody who wants to have access to a community and knowledge that will help you build your brand. So we do have pay what you can scholarships, and it's exactly as it sounds. If all you can afford is $1, then Inner Power is $1 a month for you on that scholarship program. So to learn about that, it's tomearl.me/innerpower, but I will also email that to you as well. And one last thing, and then I promise, Antonio, we'll get to your question, is for folks who are leaving early, this is how we like to end. This is our closing ritual, is that you put your arms straight out in front of you like this. If you can see me on the camera. If you can't, you just basically put your arms straight out in front of you, and then you cross those arms, until you're giving yourself a big hug, because you are all doing very important work, making the world a better place. So I appreciate the heck out of all of you joining. There we go, Tom giving himself a hug. So feel free to stay on. I'm going to answer Antonio's question and any extra questions that we have, but I know some folks needed to jump off, so I just wanted to do that. But Antonio, back to your question, your podcast question. So you're saying that, is it content that is related to what you're doing already? Tell me a little bit about the.
Yes. So along the way, as a storyteller, I had to record, I have different recordings in the studio, live recordings. So there's just, there's 6 hours of existing CDs and cassettes that I've sold for years. Many of my people don't even have CD players in the cars anymore. So it's all available on iTunes and stuff like that. But I just heard you talking about podcasts and even like stripping audio out of videos. So I have a YouTube channel. It's not a lot of schools visit it and share my videos with kids that if they can't bring me in or if I'm not available. So there's a lot of people seeing these videos. So part of me is like, I should just have all of that also available. I'm consuming a lot of podcasts myself while driving or doing dishes. So I think that should be available for people who consume, or would enjoy these stories through podcasts. I'm pursuing other things, and I'm a dad, and all those are more important. But also, if it's something that is whatever easy or worth it, there's some core people that for sure would listen to the stories in that way. And yeah, so that the question is, it's like eat less and exercise to get fit, right? How easy or hard is that? Or if that energy or time or money I might spend is worth it. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm definitely a fan of taking something that's really kind of inaccessible to your audience and making it accessible. So podcast is definitely one of the ways to do that. So I'm a fan of stripping that audio and uploading it. So what I then want to talk about, though, is kind of the bigger strategy. So let's say you put them out in hour increments and you end up getting 10 of those hour increments. You schedule one a week. Now the 10 weeks end. Are you going to continue putting something out once a week, or will that kind of be the end of it for a little bit?
Right. Let's see. If that's 10 weeks, that probably be the end of it. Although that would probably be the end of it at this point. I'm the thing that have people, you should do whatever. I'm trying to figure out with Christine, like, what is it that I want to be doing? What do I need to be doing? What is the best use of what I'm doing? But podcasts are interesting. I'm understanding. I know you actually talked about your podcast about what's the thing you want to be talking about. And the stories I tell and how I tell stories and how I find stories, all that's interesting to me. In 10 weeks, would I move into doing that once a month or a minute a day, like you said? I'm not sure.
Here's what I would suggest then. I would suggest putting all of that out, but describing it as something like, what was it called in cassette form?
Oh, they all have they're like albums, right? So like one is called Looking for Papito, and one is called, The Barking Mouse and Other Tales of Wonder. Like and each album has 6 or 7 stories in them. It would just, in some ways I would look at it as if I had a podcast channel, one of the channels, or, a podcast landing place, one of the channels would be Antonio's stories, and here they are. And the second channel might be me and my process, and, whatever.
That's what I would do then. I would call it like Antonio's discography of short stories, or Antonio's compilation of short stories. And I would describe it as in podcast form. I wouldn't necessarily call it a podcast. I would say it's in podcast format so that it's easy for you. For example, one of the things that we all create is some sort of freebie to sign up for your mailing. So for a long time, my freebies were, I have an online school, and they were in my online school. So you'd sign up, and then the freebie you get instant access to that free course. But what I found is that for people to do that, they'd have to be at a computer, they'd have to sign into it on their phone. So instead, what I did is now my freebie gives you the link to, I have made my freebie in podcast form, so that when people sign up, I found that now people actually are going through the freebie because everybody uses podcast. But my podcast kind of has a concept. It's consistent. They kind of build on each other. Whereas if your stories are going to kind of be standalone, still put them as a podcast so that they're super accessible. People can listen to them. You're building relationships. But then at the same time, if you don't end it, people aren't going to be like, why the heck did he end? Because it's more like a standalone library. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Okay.
But what you could do is if you do start a podcast, I would then add like a 20-second trailer at the end where you're like, hey, thanks so much for listening to Antonio's short stories discography. I do have a podcast where I talk about blah, blah, blah. It comes out blah, blah, blah. You'll find the link below, or head to blah, blah, blah.com/blah, blah, blah. And the fun thing about podcasts is, unlike YouTube videos, once you publish a podcast, you can actually re-upload audio without it erasing all of that stuff. And so all people who come back and listen to it in the future will hear the new one you uploaded. So that'll be kind of a nice thing you can do, is if you build an audience of people listening to your discography, that, they can, when they listen to it in the future, you can re-upload the new audio, and then they'll hear that pitch at the end. Does that make sense?
It does. Practically, are there easy ways to do this? Is this something that's easily farmed out? Is it just time? You know what I mean? I definitely have at this point more money than time in terms of what I'm working on. So like, what is, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So you mean it's a cassette? Is it digital format, or is it just cassette?
No, everything's on iTunes even now. Everything is all digital. All my stuff is on digital, and then I have all the YouTube videos as well. So like, you basically said strip out the audio, and then, I mean, is there just a program? Is there a thing that you use? Is there or what? How do just like, if I were to say to my assistant, hey, here's all the stuff on iTunes, here's all the YouTube stuff, just do it and upload it to blah blah blah, right? Is that the case, or is that
That is the case. Can you see my screen?
Okay.
No, you're on phone, right?
No, yes, but I'll look at it. I'll look at the replay and yeah.
So when I send you the replay of this, it's going to give you access to a couple of my freebies, and one of them is Podcasting 101. So you'll see a handout in there that gives you some options. So I use Spreaker. Other people use, I'm fasting today, so my mind's blinking on the other names. But basically, you'd pick one of these places that hosts your podcasts and then distributes it to Spotify, to iTunes, to Google Player. So you would go to the thing and do like bulk upload, Zoom, upload them all if you want to do them all at one time. Boom, they're all uploaded. Your assistant could go through and title them all, and you could schedule them all to come out, 1 week after the other, or if you want them all to just be out at one time. So it's really more of a, paying somebody to have do the logistics than necessarily needing a lot of thought process, unless you want to add a new intro or outro, but you might want to just put them up as they are already.
That is hugely helpful. Thank you very much.
Of course. So thank you to both of you for sticking around. Antonio or Tom, do you have any other questions, or was I able to answer all the ones you came with?
You answered all my questions.
Okay, perfect. Tom, did you have any other questions? I think you're shaking your head no.
Thanks very much.
Thanks. It's such a pleasure to meet both of you. I'm glad you stopped by, and I hope we can connect again in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tom. Have a good night.
You too. Peace.